Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Gilliland, one of the co-founding attorneys of the Legal Geeks. We are continuing our analysis of Skeleton Crew with strange, with the strange, fun episode of Are we in the Twilight Zone? Is this something new? Is there time travel? No, it's I don't remember no at Attin. And let's rock and roll with some fun analysis. With us tonight is retired Judge Matthew Sciarrino from the New York Supreme Court, who is now wonderfully retired in Florida and fun Disney pictures. And bless you, sir, that looks like quite the life. Also, Kris Butler, back, the Star Wars lawyer, and we're going to continue rocking out with Kris. And Stephen Tollafield,
Hey,
constant wingman at cons, Star Wars aficionado, and gentlemen, starting with Your Honor, what did you think of episode 4?
The entire series has just been so much fun, and the the Goonies vibe, the Disney Treasure Planet vibe, which grabs a lot from the old Treasure Island, is just so much fun. It's a fun show. It had some serious moments. I think my favorite moment of the show is when he gets off the ship. And he sees the soldiers surrounding him, and he just says, "Just shoot me." I mean, that's the greatest line of that episode, in my opinion. And it was it's a fun show, but it had some interesting elements. I'm trying to figure out, how much of the old Star Wars lore they're going to grab, and how I'm very curious as to who created all these at planets. What was it, part of the infinite empire? Are they going to go back? Is this going to
mm,
lead to a movie that they're going to be doing about the dawn of the Jedi? Is this something straight out of the forge of the old republics and the Racketeer Empire? And so I'm really curious as to where this is all going.
All good questions. Stephen, your thoughts?
I'm liking it. Can I be the curmudgeon?
Of course.
Like, I'm liking it. Like I'm not gonna yuck anyone's yum about a Star Wars show, God forbid. But it's they kind of lost me on this episode, I gotta say. I'm liking the kid vibe because after all, Star Wars is all stories for kids, and centering children like this show does is very true to the spirit of Star Wars, and it captures all of those great 80s movies where children were kind of the heroes and leading like on the front lines, but literally these children were on the front lines. It was very troubling to me in some weird ways, and I'm hoping that like the next episode kind of maybe like liberates the children. I feel like they're being used in very kind of scary ways. But overall, I'm still enjoying the episode. I have questions. I have notes.
Kris, we've shared our thoughts on it a couple days ago, but for episode 4 specifically, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I thought it was real interesting. I was wondering, my first initial thought when they land on at Akron was, is this at Attin? But they blew it up, and so then they moved, and they were like, this would be the second at Attin, but it's like, is that the experiment? As they go around the planet. But yeah, I when Jod was like, just shoot me, I was like, oh, me during bar prep. Just another day. All right, just
That
but
was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Bar prep.
Oh, Lordy. Oh, yeah, there was a lot to this episode. The way what the whiplash of it felt like how Andor goes to prison
Hmm.
and the whiplash that you have from what happens in prison and then getting out and it's back to more of a traditional Star Wars story. This had some really solid acting. So let's start with Neil. The fact that you have a puppet emoting with big eyes and you have the physical actor, doing acting in a basically a giant character suit and making it meaningful and endearing is a powerful trick. The actress who plays Fern has very emotive eyes. So the direction on her with seeing her like, fighting back tears or marching out to be cannon fodder, they really capture terror in her eyes extremely well. So hats off to the Daniels for doing that, and hats off to her for like emoting like that. Because KB keeps the visor down most of the time. So and
Hmm.
she's more robotic in this. So that I don't know how to read that. And Wim is Wim, but like we don't see that level of attention and kind of the terror factor of being converted into a frontline soldier. And there are a whole bunch of legal issues with this.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's a lot. So jumping over to the outline for tonight, let's address, the question about what flag do you fly? And my reaction to this was this planet was set up like at Attin. I I'll bet good money that the planet's run by a AI of some kind, that the supervisor isn't biological, and that's how they maintain order. And this is where I get the Fallout vibe of was it number 34 or 32 is not um staffed. And when one of them finds out the truth about management, they go on a killing spree and civil society falls apart. Did something like that happen here? And did it happen so long ago that you just have small tribes left trying to kill each other and everyone looking like refugees, and there's no memory of what life was before everything went to hell? Like that was my reaction to coming down to the Planet of the Apes type, you know, I was home all along type feeling, that these were model planets that had the same design. And
Yeah.
so it's there was a plan here in place, and something went really wrong on this planet. It also raises the issue, go to one of the other planets and see if the coordinates are on any of those pillars. So that's my easy plot armor out of this. But for the fall of a society, Stephen, could do you have any thoughts about the what happened to at Akron?
I mean, keeping in line with the focus on kind of juvenile behavior and what people act like when there aren't any rules anymore, it seemed to me very Lord of the Flies that they've kind of fragmented into little factions and clans, and they're fighting each other for resources. Although the resources seemed, I don't know, I guess they did say that they depended on the EOB for their survival, which, sort of makes the stakes higher, but it seemed like they're very like small stakes. Like they're gonna burn their granary and they're gonna steal their cattle, and it's very like kind of old-timey Western kind of Hatfield and McCoy type situations as opposed to anyone actually vying for any meaningful leadership. So yeah, I'm really curious about like what happened on at Akron. Also, I grew up in Ohio near actual Akron, Ohio. So they started calling it at Akron and it just like popped me right out of the story. But yes, I'm really curious about where or what the clans are fighting over other than resources, which maybe is their fight for survival.
Yes. Judge Sciarrino, your thoughts?
I likewise got very much the Fallout vibes, and the Planet of the Apes vibes watching this episode. And I'm very curious as to were these set up as experiments. I mean, one of the things that I kind of noticed is there's a real mix of planetary species on each of the planets. And in some of the Dawn of the Jedi novels, which aren't canon anymore, but those planets were seeded where they had multiple planetary races and species on those planets. So I'm very much thinking that this was set up as some kind of experiment where there must have been a different variable in each of these, very much a la the Fallout show. And it was, I don't know if it's a positive thing, but it was somewhat interesting to see that the clans weren't broken up in racial planetary species, but by young kids and I guess the other gang you really don't see, but I'm going to guess that they were older, either older children or adults. It doesn't seem like the type of planet where you get to really live to old age. But and likewise, like Stephen said, I very much got, this is cattle rustling, and the first thing that I thought of with the stealing of the Osprey was the old stealing of the cattle that you would see in all those Western movies, which started with the neighboring person or the guys traveling through your town stole your cattle.
Yeah, a little Billy the Kid action there. Uh, Kris, your analysis.
So I looked at it as what are these people left with after their society has collapsed? Because like Stephen was saying earlier, it seems sort of juvenile, the things that it's very unsophisticated, the way that they're, which flag do you fly? It's not, and you're raising these kids up to, be like, I will lead my clan to victory. What is victory? I don't understand why you haven't beaten each other. How long has this been going on for? Because we know, at least if Attin is referring to the Republic, the old Republic as the Republic, it's been at least uh like 1013, something years since the old Republic era ended. So, how long has Akron been like this? Because they still have some blasters, but they don't look anything close to, um, I guess, modern by Star Wars context. So, how long have they been at it, or were they set up in a way like this, doomed to fail? But they're just, go back and forth and repopulate, and it'll be like the same 30 of you going at it.
I, there were Star Trek episodes like Muri, which is a disease that wipes out the adults, and the kids are 500 years old and not aging or aging slowly. Uh, it's There are other pop culture examples that come to mind of a closed society that's fallen in some way, derailed, and they've become primal and fighting over resources. What caused a resource shortage? Or did they learn what management was and thus break the computer of what was in control and holding them together? Having annual aptitude tests to figure out what jobs people are going to have, might be a good form of stability, but it destroys freedom in that process. However, if that's freedom where people are begging for scraps and killing each other and trying to finish the job, that doesn't seem better. Uh, like it's Atkin has running water and electricity, probably dental care, and these guys don't. But you do see similar species. They're the hammerheads running around. There are humans. I don't on at Akron. I think those were the only two that I noticed. I Unless there was another species that was just kind of in the background that
What our Greedo species is, there was a couple of those
Rhodians.
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 Okay.
I saw a few of them and some other you know common more more of the common ones that you would see at the various cantinas that they would go to visit and other things. But any society, it's kind of hard to keep a society of just kids because if it's just kids, it's kind of hard to repopulate your society. So that there's got to be something that's controlling and 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 kind of moderating this society. And was this part of the experiment on this planet as compared to the other planets, or is it because it devolved these thousands of years ago when these planets were first created by whoever created them and hid them?
Yeah. There are echoes from Genesis of the Daleks and a couple of the Capaldi episodes dealing with Davros as a kid.
On the Dalek issue, one of the weapons even looked like the front part of a Dalek.
Yeah, and with those episodes, you see a mix of technology because there are some of the high-end tech still, but also woven uh clothing, biplanes dropping high ordnance, and just because they had been at war for so long, they didn't have the engineering skills anymore to build some of the tech that they needed. So they're again using older tech because that's what they could figure out. And this seems to be at play here with it's a broken planet that they've been killing each other for, I would guess, at least a century. But, you know, if, how long has the Onyx Cinder been crashed? So, like, if it's been crashed for 300 years, because those skeletons, like, there was no meat left on those. There was no skin. Like, there was completely bare bones. And it takes a little time to get to that, especially if there's just one mouse running around. So, like, for that level of deterioration to happen, a significant amount of time has passed. So, are we talking 500 years of war where they're just eliminating each other? And that's why there's only a handful of these the population left. So, uh, so yes, yes, yes. So that's the first big issue, and I think we've covered that well for the what the heck factor. We have, Smee being put into babysitting mode, and then we see Jod Nah, which again, that's still weird to me. Uh, Start going through stuff because he's just hanging out, and he finds the Republic credits. I wasn't sure if those were whims that he hid or if they were just, because this is an old ship. Uh, but that raises the question, is he a thief? And Judge Sciarrino, you provided over criminal courts for many years. Your thoughts?
Oh, he's absolutely a thief on all levels. He's a con man. He's a scoundrel in Star Wars parlance, and clearly he's taking things that don't belong to him, and he's out of a pirate culture, and I don't think that he sees anything necessarily wrong with acquiring things through whatever means he acquires them. But there's no doubt in mind that he's a thief. Whether he's a redeemable one, as tends to be the case in most Star Wars type stories, I'm sure he is. He's a very interesting character. It's interesting to see, someone for abilities portrayed in the way that he's being portrayed.
Stephen, your thoughts?
Yeah, I had a question because I don't know anything about corporate law other than what I studied for the bar like 20 years ago. But and I it's pretty clear, I think if it is in good point, Josh, that it's not clear if it was like Whims credits or just they were on the ship, but they were shiny like Whims were, so I kind of assumed they were. But assuming they were Whims, had he somehow made them into some sort of capital contribution into the partnership when he bought dinner or the meal for him and Neil on the space station. I think that probably Wim thought that they were still his own personal property and that it hadn't become the capital of the partnership. But would Jod have some sort of, maybe not legal defense, but say, look, we're all in this together. I use the credits to buy your freedom. Um, can we just call it a wash because I used this your private property in the furtherance of our partnership enterprise. So it technically wasn't a theft, even though I took your private property. But again, I don't know anything about partnerships. I don't know, like the misappropriation of one partner's property by another partner to further the goals still seems like a theft to me. But
And it would still be a theft, and unless it was done with absolute permission that they knew they were contributing towards the partnership pot. It was still their personal assets at that point. That's why I don't have any doubt as to him being a thief.
Yeah, and it was Wim's because he dumped him out of the sock, and that's where Wim had put the dataries. But yeah, that man straight up solo, and there was no intent of, oh yeah, I'm going to use these to help the kid. It's like, huh, these are nice. These are mine now. Yeah,
That's true. That happened well before they were kidnapped or whatever, right? Yeah, that's true. He didn't know anything about that.
Yeah, it'd be one thing if you put them down and went like, "Oh, that's interesting." Like, I'll remember that for later, and then you could have a necessity defense if he had to go get them and say like, "I knew we had these credits. I knew they were yours, and I used them to save you. I'm sorry, I saved you." Like, it's like that's what one thing. But if it's like he puts them on his person, then it's like, okay, now we just changed the ball game here because that's now looking like a theft.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. Yeah. So yeah, there's some messiness there. But so the kids get we have debate on how to classify them. That they're exploring. We have the scouts from the Druk. Does anyone know how that's properly pronounced?
No.
Okay. Looking at the subtitles, I went, "What?"
Right? Yeah, is
Try it.
yeah.
It's like that's a weird vowel combination. I'm really struggling here on how to pronounce that. That aside,
Yeah, the naming in this show is very odd. Like Attin it's such a hard thing to say. I feel bad for the performers.
Yeah,
It's
I almost feel like you're stuttering to some degree every time you have to say one of the planets.
yeah.
And every time poor Smee has to try to say it and not I don't know at that, it's just like compounded.
They're putting their stamp on is it an AT-AT or an AT-AT? That's what they're doing.
I thought of that. I was like, wouldn't it be funny if the nerds had to fight about AT-AT or AT-AT? We'll just make them all say AT-AT for an entire show. Like, that's hilarious.
I would not put that past some writers' sense of humor.
It's AT-AT-10. That's what we're calling it now. AT-AT-10.
all right, being a Gen Xer who got one of those bad boys, Christmas morning, 1980, AT-AT. That's the way we learned back in 80.
But it was on the
Likewise.
commercial. Yeah.
So, but it's weird how those things start. So are they captured? Are they kidnapped? Are they invited? Like, because this gets really weird because they clearly get saved, but they're not saying like, "Hey, go on your way." It's come back to our base with us. And there isn't. It wasn't optional, but it didn't sound like an order either. Like it wasn't a weapon pointed at them. And Kris, why don't you go first on this one? Because like your thoughts.
Well, my first thing is, can a kid kidnap another kid? And I don't know. I mean, there was, a weapon pointed, but aren't these kids acting on behest of the father and the general? So would he get locked with the kidnapping charges? And also, did she save them from the other tribe? Because, maybe they would have, I mean, they probably would have put them in the exact same position, but I don't know who saved who. But yeah, they're definitely not guessed it, because I think as soon as the general saw them, he knew they were going to be, cannon fodder. So I'm leaning to the kidnapped.
I wonder if it's guessed and then false imprisonment.
Yeah.
Which could be the other menu option that it turned into you can't leave after meeting the true ruler of the planet. That's when the freedom of choice has been eradicated. Judge Sciarrino, your thoughts?
Yeah, when they first make made contact, I don't think she was thinking of bringing him home to dad to for him to kidnap them. And likewise with what Kris said, a kid really kidnapping a kid, uh, probably doubtful. But if she was acting as an agent of her dad, the dad possibly would be liable for the crime of kidnapping. But I think she just wanted to save them in that particular point in time, and then went back at the base, and then the more nefarious. Um, we're going to make you a soldier for us and the dad. So I am in line with you, Josh, in that this probably was more of a false imprisonment after the fact type of situation.
Stephen, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we all agree. I think the only thing I'll add is that it certainly is possible to kidnap someone without kind of holding a gun to their head or like tying them up and dragging them away. You can threaten them with force, or you can pretend to be a police officer and say, "Come with me," and that can, even if they come willingly, they've been duped into moving a substantial amount of space that it can count as kidnapping, at least in California. But but yeah, I think that's, as you're saying, is like the girl, what's her name? Hi something. It begins with an H. I can't remember. Anyway, I don't think she necessarily has the mens rea to kidnap them. Like she doesn't know that she's sort of doing anything wrong other than trying to save them. Although if she had known that maybe the other clan wouldn't have hurt them or something and was just kind of like leading them away, then that might be more arguably kidnapping. But yeah, it was a weird situation, and it seemed to definitely morph, as you're saying, into something a little more sinister once they got to their base.
Yeah, because it's dad is not okay. And I don't know if they're just warped because of the amount of war that they've experienced, but that's just absolutely not okay. So, let's get into the issue of treating the children as adults out of respect. So I'm just going to start with this. No, no, that's bad. And Stephen, why don't you go first on this one?
I mean, like we honor our children by throwing them in front of guns? Like, what is going on? Yeah, I was very perplexed by that whole situation. It made me feel really weird and kind of upset. But yeah, I don't know where they're going with this. And obviously you can't put children in danger like that. That's not okay. And I don't have a ton of military experience or know much about conflict, but when fighting forces, my understanding is when fighting forces start to use children as soldiers, that means that they're losing and they don't have anyone else to fight. And that really bothers me that their numbers are so dwindled that they're starting to force children to carry weapons and to hurt people. So yeah, this like I said, this episode kind of lost me a little bit there, and I'm hoping that there's some sort of comeuppance for these adults who are saying that they're treating their children with respect. It's really weird.
Well, luckily, we have someone who has experience with military law. Judge Sciarrino, could you share your thoughts on this?
Clearly, with regards to any of the conventions that exist today, the use of children in any kind of warfare is prohibited. And the two glaring examples from history that I can think of are with Adolf Hitler and the Hitler Youth. And again, like Stephen just said, it's only when you're really, really losing bad do your basically your youth Cub Scout type of groups, they're getting guns and saying, you need to save the fatherland. And the other clear example is in some of the civil wars in some of the African nations and some of the warlords that use, recruit, kidnap children. And I think, that's closer in time to our modern age. And I think that's kind of what they were kind of going for was that kind of warlord vibe. And there's been plenty of cases where some of these strong men have raided villages and then train those children to become their soldiers, and there's no way under international law that would not be prosecuted in an international criminal court if that person is not victorious, because we all know, unfortunately, in history, if the 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 people who are victorious sometimes become much harder to prosecute in international uh, war crime tribunals, and it's really only the losers of the wars that get prosecuted in the wartime tribunals.
Yeah. Kris, your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, absolutely not. These kids are not adults, and for the father to be treating them this way, and I guess the other adults to be okay with it. Now, because we add a new candidate to who's the worst father in Star Wars between Vader, Vitiate, and now I don't even remember this guy's name, but him.
Yeah, the jerk. Like,
Yeah.
going to the kidnap factor, and just this is towards the end after Jod secures their freedom. It's clearly he's getting their freedom. The kids weren't free to leave.
Yeah.
And which again goes to the kidnapping issue, or they've been conscripted into this guy's personal army, and none of them know what they're fighting for besides resources. So it's just this. I mean, it's one thing to go, hey, we need fresh water or we need animals. Like, that's basic. I mean, that's where the foreign policy has devolved to the point of we just need basic necessities and we'll kill each other to get it because we don't know how to interact. Like, that's just, I mean, that's terrible. I mean, like, it is. It's like the emperor was like, sure, it was power for the sake of power, but like they still had running water, as opposed to it, unless you had your land illegally taken from you and you're charged with treason and you're just thrown into a work camp until you die. All bad, all bad. Not making excuses.
I would be curious to know how what if this show, first of all, has much of an audience with actual kids. I'm curious. I don't really know like what their viewership numbers are like, but I'm curious like if other kids perceive that that's wrong. Because if you're a kid in that age and an adult says, we treat our children with respect, they fight along with us, I might be, yeah, they should. They should treat us like adults. Because and in the childhood fantasy of being kind of brave and being on the front lines, that might be consistent with being a kid. But I don't know. Like I'm that's why I was so troubled by this. I feel like it was targeted at kids to make them feel like they were special, but then also not. Yeah, it's very confusing.
And as a kid, you get to play with the really cool, loud guns,
Yeah,
which
right?
clearly seemed like a selling point to her,
Right.
because his daughter clearly was a willing participant in these wars, and that was really uh, when Elle kind of brought home that whole episode, like, what are you really fighting for? Why don't you just decide not to fight? I thought it was a very powerful
Mhm.
message that clearly, could be applied in many areas of our planet today. Like,
Mhm.
can you really think about the real reasons you're fighting here? And maybe there's actually more reasons not to fight. And I thought, and it was really well done, that episode. But I agree with you. A kid on the couch watching this show might be, well, at least he's treating his kids like a real person, not talking down to him.
I'm not a kid, Dad.
Right. But
I'm
yeah,
a person, and my name is
I
Anakin.
I never thought of that, but
Oh,
yeah,
no.
that's very good on the Anakin issue, Or you could be a soldier who can't be a sergeant, as opposed to, being a master of a council.
but I think the message that yes, I do think this is geared at kids, and I've listened to a couple podcasts with dads talking about their kids watching it, and Wim goes from talking to the female youth child soldier of is your planet in a struggle with the children fighting the adults for control of the planet? So like he starts being very excited at the beginning, he has a big change of heart after
Hmm.
actually realizing he's supposed to go be target practice. And I think that's the issue to focus on here, that they learn like this is supposed to be scary. This is supposed to be, catch 22, like highlighting war sucks. Like, it's like one part might be like, oh, look, we're all practicing together and climbing over things, and then things start exploding, including people, and their tune changes dramatically. Like, this seems like a horrible freaking idea. I want to go home now. And I think our protagonists realize that.
And I think if you look at it in light of even back to episode one, where him and Nell are fight fake lightsaber battling
Hmm.
because it's cool to to make believe to fight, and there's no true Star Wars fan on this planet. I don't think that hasn't had a fake lightsaber fight with another human being on this planet. I have had many of them, and there's probably four lightsabers behind me. But the when you counter, he really did, I think, see that war isn't just a game that you play as a kid, that there's real consequences to that kind of uh, action.
Yeah, it's dark, and I think that's part of the reason why the show is, we go from Goonies to something truly terrifying.
Goonies had some dark moments.
It
Hmm.
did. It's like, the tomatoes being dropped in the blender. Like, yeah, there's some scary stuff in there of I'm gonna, torture a child, or what happens with this. So we do have some basic lessons in contracts. So the easiest one is Jod negotiating for their first the animals and then getting their freedom. He knows how to make a bargain twice. Uh, Anyone want to address first the animals and then saving the kids?
I agree with you. I think there's some good negotiation skills. I mean, we didn't get to see the him interacting with the other side, but he clearly made a contract, a deal with the other side in exchange for this. I'm getting this, and that's the your basic contract at work, and it's it's everyone performed to their end of the bargain, so it was a successful contract.
We're assuming he actually made that deal and didn't kill them all.
He was really outnumbered, and while Smee is good, that's a lot of heavy lifting for that droid.
Well, because it makes me think it's like, okay, yes, the data is shiny, but in a society like that, what do they have need of it?
Uh, Treating with
I
authority.
would say there's more of a chance of him going back after the deal and stealing the money than him having wiped them out and so I would not put it past him to down the road kind of get the credits that he paid kind of thing, but I would be very surprised if it turned out that he wiped out the other side.
Yeah, yeah. So there again, lot not there. Stephen, anything to add?
I had a question. I was trying to remember the when Fern was initially kind of negotiating with the bad guy, like their tit for tat was, if you train and prove to me that you are strong enough, then I will take you to the fallen sanctum. Was that the bargain that she struck with them?
Yeah, yes. So that was the other contract. So
Yeah, okay.
there's three in at least three in this.
Yeah, yeah. So for that one, I guess I was unclear about like what their performance would look like. And I guess his test to see if they were ready was that if they successfully
So
scouted ahead and
didn't die.
I think that was just a BS agreement to begin with.
Hmm.
That
okay,
was
yeah.
just that was pure just to get them to fight at their hardest for me, and then later down the road you'll get another thing that you'll have to do and another thing you have to do, and before you know it, you're just a grunt soldier. So
Yeah.
I really don't think that he had any intent to ever perform. Although I think his daughter probably would have kept her word and taken them to the tower for doing what they were supposed to have done down the road. I don't think he had any intention ever of following through with that.
Yeah, strong enough is too vague of a term.
Yeah, yeah, in legal parlance, I agree. I think that's too vague a contract to be enforceable.
Yeah, because there's performance contracts, but the performance has to be specific.
Mm.
Yeah, there has to be some metrics to the performance that you have to, whether it's fighting X battles, whether it's that we win this battle. There has to be some kind of metric to it.
Or the unilateral contract of lost dog, $500 reward. Like you
Yes.
find the dog, you get the reward. Very specific. This is if you're strong enough, we'll take you to the Fallen Sanctum or whatever, its name is, in order to get these coordinates. Yeah, he's playing them. And it's, despite that, his daughter actually has a moral compass.
Hmm.
Yes.
How did she learn that in that environment?
I'm guessing from mom,
Yeah.
Yeah.
whoever she is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that like as you said before, Neil kind of taking the lead and being the sort of establishing the moral high ground in that episode is very consistent with other Star Wars things. At least the in other situations where children have been centered like this, there have been, like, for example, Queen Amidala was a child ruler, and with the idea being that children have sort of superior wisdom or instincts or judgment about how to deal with people. And I think that kind of shone through in this episode too, that sort of through line of Star Wars.
Agreed. Agreed. So, anything else with the contracts that, since we have three of them that we've intermixed in discussing? Hearing none, let's talk about getting to the where the supervisor would be and finding out that we have a droid that was ordered not to say anything. Very Hell 9000 like. That was
Hmm.
my reaction of, like told to forget, and thus Hal starts killing crew members. And it activates a sub-program for it, tear people limb from limb. And Fern almost gets to countermand it, but she trips.
Hmm.
What's the liability of a long dead captain? Who would you sue for leaving that dangerous of a command prompt? And is this like products liability? Is this negligence? Is it recklessness? But the bigger issue is like, who do you sue? And Kris, take it away.
I mean, I don't know who you sue in this case, because I think we said after the last episode, it's probably at this point, if the captain had any descendants, they're long gone or long removed from the situation. But I thought that he's definitely a booby trap,
Mm-hmm.
and that's, usually when they looks at booby traps, look at your own personal property or your own private property, which we don't. I mean, you kind of have with the Onyx Cinder, that was formerly the captain's, and the droids are usually property of people. So I think that in some way that he qualifies as a booby trap.
Stephen, your thoughts?
I hadn't thought of that. He's almost like the spring gun,
Yeah.
like if you have a booby trap on your property. But like you said, the supervisor's tower, I guess we don't know who Smee belonged to before the before he just showed up on the Onyx Cinder. So maybe the supervisor of at Akron was his previous owner, who knows? But yeah, you're right. I think it's we've sort of struggled with identifying the legal status of droids because they are property, but they're also sentient and have their own kind of free will to some degree. And so it's difficult to say who, in sort of translating that Star Wars fantasy to real world law. It's kind of hard to say who would have liability for that, I guess. But yeah, he's doesn't seem like his will is his own when he's flips over into wanting to tear people from limb to limb. That seems like something that's beyond his own personal motivations.
So, Judge Sciarrino, if the droid manufacturing company is still in existence,
That's who I said I'm going to go. Who I was just about to say I'm going to go after, because the Star Wars universe tends to have these industrial complex companies that have been around generational wise. So there is a chance that the manufacturer in the Republic days might still be around because most of those manufacturers. Were smart enough to make weapons for the Empire, so they've survived. So if it's one of the big ones, it's probably still around. So I'm going after the manufacturer of the droid as a dangerous instrument. And it might not be successful. And I was going to also give a C super to some other episodes of the Legal Geeks where we've discussed droid rights and whether or not droids are sentient creatures or if they're property. And we've discussed those issues in prior episodes of your show, Josh. But yeah, the only deep pockets that I can figure out would be the manufacturer of the of the droid itself. Now, whether there's the the reprogramming of the droid because the captain that's long dead probably has significantly altered the programming of this droid. If I'm the manufacturer, I'm going to say that, when we gave it, it was in X condition, and it was only because the pirate captain made these programming changes to then it become a dangerous instrument. When we created it, it was only a service droid.
yeah, well, it's there's a lot there. There's so much there.
I
Uh,
love Smee. He's to me the one of the most fun characters of this show.
well, then there's the issue of prosecuting him for attempted murder, and with that, we get into defenses of whether or not the insanity defense would apply because part of his skull has been corrupted and damaged, and he's missing an eye, and we got a mouse living in it. Like, does he fully comprehend the wrongfulness of his actions?
And as
And
far as punishment, I'm going to probably turn him over to the torturing droid in Jabba's lair because he seems to be pretty good at punishing wayward droids.
Well, what is the criminal culpability of, one James Buchanan Barnes? He was the Marvel's Manchurian candidate, yet, the United Nations or Shield or well, not Shield anymore because it was gone, but the United Nations surely wanted to throw Bucky in jail for all the crimes he committed as a Hydra agent, even though it was well known he had no will to do any of it.
which was our first mock trial we ever did.
I was
Hmm.
going to say, which also is a C super to a prior episode of Legal Geeks.
Yeah. First mock trial, and at San Diego Comic Fest in 2016. Ironically, the day Justice Scalia died. So
Hmm.
it's in the middle of the panel that the news alerts started coming out. And we're like, okay, don't say anything. Keep it cool. Keep it cool. Um, but here we are. So with that, anyone have any other topics for the good of the order? Seeing none, I'm enjoying this. I thought the Daniels did a great job with this episode, furthered the mystery, and some of those kids really do have good acting chops.
Hmm.
'Cause, hey, look scared. Uh, tear up. Like, not easy. So, hats off to them for pulling that, making that believable.
The amount of prosthetics that's on the elephant costume and still
Hmm.
being able to emote emotion is is really something for a young actor to be able to do, and it's it's very. I think they did a very good job of casting. I mean,
Hmm.
we all knew Jude Law was going to be great. Jude Law is generally always great in whatever he does. But whenever you're dealing with children actors, it's always a question mark, and they did a very good job, I think, of casting these children because I think they're performing very well.
Right. Well, that Thank you all for your time. This is fun. I love having weekly Star Wars. It makes me happy, and it's nice to be able to get together and discuss it with friends. For everyone, we have a new episode Christmas Eve, so wherever you are, celebrate accordingly. And that might interrupt some presents and other things that happen traditionally on Christmas Eve, or watch this after the candlelight service. I'm not sure how that's all going to work out, but there's going to be Star Wars on Christmas Eve, and that's very cool. I'm like, that is just so cool to have that.
And even more important than Star Wars Christmas Eve is getting Star Wars presents Christmas morning. And I still get, I have a very good wife. I still will get some kind of Christmas Star Wars presents on Christmas Day.
I have lots of Star Wars ornaments. Yeah, I hear you.
I'll go you one better. I had to have my own tree this year for the Star Wars ornaments because they were eclipsing our regular tree. So this year, since it's a new house and we were buying new trees anyway, we have a regular tree, and right outside my study, I have a Star Wars only ornament tree.
Chris, you're holding up Vader's helmet. Is that
Yes.
Did Santa
Yep.
bring that?
Well, if by Santa you mean me, yes.
Santa, you look great.
Yeah, well, thanks.
Fantastic.
that was awesome? One of my scouts gave me a little Star Wars Christmas tree for my desk at work. That's very cute, and all the ornaments are Star Wars characters Christmasized. So it's very cute. Well, everyone, thank you. Have a safe holiday. We will be back wherever you are. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay geeky. Take care.